I paid for the entire Christmas celebration, the food, the decor, even the gifts for everyone, only for my mom to hand me a special present, a handwritten blacklist titled People Who Divide This Family. My name was at the very top. That's when I realized just how little my efforts meant to them. I covered all the expenses for our Christmas presents, the food, everything, yet my mother presented me with a particular item, a printed list titled, Guidelines for Remaining Welcome. I remained silent. 3 months later, I offered her my own present, a notification for a frozen savings account, delivered on New Year's Day. I had poured my effort into this year's Christmas celebration. Every dollar, $1,200 on gifts, a honey-glazed ham from the caterer, and strands of lights sparkling across my living room. I'm Sarah, the eldest of 3, and I've consistently been the one to keep our family's festive occasions vibrant. Last year, when my father lost his job, I financed the entire event, $1,800 out of my own funds, without a single complaint. This time, I was determined to make it flawless. I had just hung the final decoration, a glass star I'd discovered at a second-hand shop, when my sister Lauren entered, dropping her coat onto the sofa I'd spent an hour cleaning. "Looks good," she mumbled, her gaze fixed on her phone. I managed a smile, brushing glitter from my hands. Then Mom arrived, her cheeks flushed from the cold, and placed a red envelope in my palm, adorned with a small gold ribbon. "A little something for you, dear," she said, her voice overly sweet. I imagined it might be a thank you note. Heaven knows I'd earned one after years of being the primary provider. My fingers tore the paper, and I pulled out a folded, neatly typed sheet. Sarah's Holiday Blacklist, Guidelines for Remaining Welcome. My breath hitched. No complaints about expenses. No domineering hosting. No bringing up past favors, like the time I settled Mom's credit card debt or Lauren's rent. I stared at the words, then at my mother. Her smile didn't waver. "We thought it would be helpful," she stated, as if handing me a recipe. Lauren smirked from the sofa. "You're always so intense, Sarah." My chest tightened. I'd spent weeks organizing, shopping, decorating, my savings depleted to provide them with a holiday they'd never bothered to finance themselves. And this was my reward, a list of directives, disguised as a gift, instructing me on how to behave in my own residence. I stood there, the envelope crushing in my grasp, their casual conversation fading into a dull drone. They had transformed my Christmas into a critique, and I was the naive one who had paid for it. The Christmas lights flickered as I stood in my living room, the list trembling in my hands. I couldn't simply allow it to remain there, a silent affront beneath the tree. I fully unfolded it and read aloud, my voice cracking like thin ice. "No unsolicited advice regarding cooking. Let Lauren manage the side dishes if she wishes. No remarks on store-bought desserts being lazy. No mentioning who paid for what." Each guideline felt like a jab, crafted to mock every effort I had made. Mom sat on the armchair, nodding like a teacher approving a lesson plan. "It's for harmony, Sarah," she said, her tone so composed it made my skin crawl. Lauren snorted, sprawled across the sofa. "Yeah, you're always so over the top." Dad merely gazed at his coffee mug, avoiding my eyes. I felt as though I had been exposed, a servant they chose to admonish instead of appreciate. The ham I'd ordered, the thoughtfully wrapped gifts, all of it turned to dust in that moment. I wanted to scream, but my throat seized up, humiliation burning more intensely than anger. Then the memories flooded in, sharp and unwelcome. 2 years prior, Lauren had called me, weeping. Her car was facing repossession. I sent her $5,000, no questions asked, even though I was eating instant noodles to afford rent. She purchased a new phone the following week, never mentioning the loan again. Then there was Mom, cornering me after Dad's surgery last spring. "We're drowning in bills," she whispered. I wired $2,000 that night, skipping my own car payment to cover it. Her thanks, a casual, "You're so fortunate to have no children, Sarah. It makes helping easier." I had bitten my tongue until it bled, convincing myself that's what family does. But standing there, the blacklist in hand, I perceived it differently. They didn't view me as family. They saw a financial resource they could exploit when it dared to voice an opinion. The most painful part wasn't even the list itself. It was a buried memory that resurfaced as I gazed at Mom's self-satisfied expression. Last summer, I had been at their residence, assisting with mail after Dad's unemployment strained their finances. I had grabbed my phone to check the time and saw a text preview from Mom to Lauren, sent an hour earlier. Sarah's dependable but so controlling. Good for money, though. I had frozen, pretending I hadn't seen it, but the words had burned into my mind. I had gone home that night and wept into my pillow, the kind of raw sobs that leave you empty. Yet I continued sending money, $1,500 for their electricity bill, $300 for Lauren's emergency vet visit. I told myself it was fine, that they didn't mean it, that affection was complicated. But now, with this list fastened under that ridiculous ribbon, it wasn't complicated affection, it was a deliberate blow. They had sat around a table, composed this, agreed I needed correction, all while I was out purchasing their Christmas stockings. I dropped the paper onto the coffee table, the sound louder than it should have been in the quiet room. "Harmony?" I said, my voice low and dangerous. Mom tilted her head as if I were a child having a tantrum. "We just want everyone to enjoy the holidays," she stated. Lauren interjected. "You make it all about you, Sarah. Like, chill." I glanced at Dad, hoping for something, anything. He sipped his coffee, eyes on the floor. My chest ached, not just from the betrayal, but from how familiar it felt. I'd spent years going out of my way, $50,000 in favors over half a decade by my rough estimate, because I believed it proved I belong. But this was them stating I didn't belong unless I adhered to their script. I decorated the house, filled it with warmth, and they transformed it into a courtroom, with me as the accused. I stepped back, hands shaking. "I need air," I mumbled, grabbing my coat. Mom called after me. "Don't be dramatic. It's just feedback." Feedback, as if I were a malfunctioning appliance they decided to fix. I didn't respond, just walked out into the cold, the snow crunching under my boots. The streetlights blurred through tears I refused to shed. I'd given them everything, money, time, parts of myself, and they presented me with a rulebook to diminish me. But as I stood there, my breath clouding in the night, something shifted. I wasn't just hurt, I was enraged. They believed they could dominate me, shame me after all I'd done. They had no idea what I was capable of. I'd been their safety net for too long, and that blacklist wasn't just a gift, it was their initial blunder. Christmas dinner began with the sound of plates and quiet conversation, but I barely registered it over the commotion in my head. I had returned inside after that chilling walk, the list still a live wire in my mind. The table was set, my table in my house, laden with food I'd paid for, the ham, mashed potatoes, even the wine Dad was pouring as if he owned the place. I moved robotically, serving portions while Lauren scrolled Instagram and Mom adjusted her napkin. No one offered assistance, not even when I nearly dropped the gravy boat. I bit my lip, the rules echoing. "No overbearing hosting." "Fine." I sat down, my plate empty, and watched them eat. Then Uncle Mike arrived, late as usual, and Lauren brightened. "Hey, Uncle Mike, check this out," she said, snatching the blacklist from the sideboard where I'd left it. She read it aloud, her voice dripping with amusement. "No guilt trips about past favors. Sarah's got to let that go." Mike chuckled. "Sounds about right." My fork froze mid-air. They were ridiculing me in my own dining room, over a meal I'd financed. I couldn't contain it any longer. "I paid for this," I declared, louder than intended. The room fell silent. Mom sighed. "There's that attitude again, Sarah." Lauren rolled her eyes. "Always the martyr." Dad simply chewed as if I hadn't spoken. Fury surged, hot and jagged. I had calculated it once, $150,000 over 5 years, from car repairs to medical copays. And they could sit here and mock me? "You're consuming my money!" I snapped, with every mouthful. Mom's smile tightened. We appreciate it, but you don't have to make it a big deal. A big deal? I had depleted my savings for their comfort, and it was a big deal? I pushed my chair back, the scrape loud against the hardwood. Enjoy your harmony, I said, and stormed to the kitchen, my hands trembling as I gripped the counter. They didn't follow, they just kept eating. That's when I decided I'd been their pushover for too long, and that blacklist was their declaration of war. I slipped into the living room, the tree lights casting shadows on the gifts I'd wrapped under the branches. I placed an envelope, plain, without a ribbon or embellishment. Inside was a notice I'd prepared that morning, intending to reclaim my savings account, the one I'd allowed Mom to co-manage after her bankruptcy 5 years ago. She'd pleaded with me to rescue her, $80,000 to clear her debts, and I'd given her access, believing she'd repay me. She never did. Instead, she withdrew from it whenever she pleased, assuming I wouldn't notice. But I had records, every withdrawal, every excuse. The account was still legally mine. She'd signed it over in a panic, too desperate to read the conditions. This notice was the initial step: freeze it, demand repayment, or close it entirely. I slid it beneath a box of Lauren's new boots, ironic, since I'd paid for those too, and returned to the table, my expression blank. Dinner stretched on, their conversation a dull hum. I didn't eat, I just observed. When they finally departed, Mom hugged me, all sweetness. Thanks for hosting, dear. Lauren smirked. See you on New Year's. I nodded, saying nothing about the envelope they'd discover later. But the betrayal didn't cease there. That night, my phone illuminated with a notification, Lauren's Instagram story. A photo of the blacklist, caption: Some people ruin Christmas with drama #FamilyFun. She tagged me, my name glowing in blue for her 300 followers to see. My jaw clenched as likes accumulated, cousins, friends, even a coworker I barely knew. She had transformed my pain into her joke, a public humiliation after I'd given her everything. I stared at the screen, the shame sinking deep, but it only fueled me. They thought they could shame me into silence. They had misjudged me. I opened the banking application, double-checking the notice I'd mailed earlier that day: certified, tracked, undeniable. Mom would receive it tomorrow, and the account would lock by week's end unless she settled her debt. I envisioned her face, that artificial sweetness dissolving into panic, and a grim satisfaction settled within me. This wasn't merely about money. It was about respect they'd never granted me. Lauren's post was the final straw, proof they'd never see me as more than a financial resource to exploit and a target to ridicule. I leaned back, the house quiet now, and allowed the anger to solidify into resolve. They had opened the door with that list. I was about to kick it down. The envelope under the tree was just the beginning. They had no idea what was coming. The days following Christmas felt like a slow burn, the silence from Mom a ticking bomb. Then, on the 27th, my phone rang, her number. I let it vibrate, bracing myself. When I finally listened to the voicemail, her voice was all honey. Sarah, dear, can you fund New Year's? We're counting on you. I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. After the blacklist, the dinner, Lauren's post, they still thought I'd agree. I texted back one word: no. The group chat exploded. Lauren: wow, selfish much? Dad: think about your mother. I muted it, finished with their guilt trips. But the true blow landed the next morning. I checked my credit card statement online, a habit after years of cleaning up their messes, and saw it, $800 in charges I hadn't made. Boutique clothes, a spa, dated Christmas Eve. My stomach twisted. I'd left my purse by the coat rack during dinner. Lauren must have swiped the card while I was serving. She texted me later casually: you owe us anyway for all the crap you pull. Theft. She'd stolen from me in my own house and had the audacity to justify it. I was still reeling when Mom invited me to a family brunch 2 days later, code for another ambush. I went, not to reconcile, but to see how far they'd push. The diner was crowded, cousins and aunts squeezed around a long table. Mom greeted me with a hug, then slid a laminated sheet across the formica. Sarah's holiday blacklist, revised. She'd updated it, bolder font, new rules. No sulking over money. No playing victim. She'd distributed copies to everyone. Aunt Jen flipped through hers, smirking. "You're too sensitive, Sarah," Mom said, loud enough for the table to hear. "We're just helping you fit in." Lauren grinned. "Yeah, stop being so dramatic." My face burned as forks clinked and eyes darted my way. They had turned my shame into a party favor, a spectacle for relatives I barely saw. I stood, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "Fit in? After I've kept you afloat?" Mom's eyes welled up, crocodile tears. "You're tearing us apart," she wailed. I left, their whispers trailing me out the door. Back home, I pulled the trigger. I'd mailed the savings account closure notice after Christmas. Mom had received it by now, judging by her call. But I logged into the bank portal and finalized it. $10,000 of my money, accumulated over years, locked away from her grasp. She'd signed it over during that bankruptcy panic, too flustered to notice I'd retained full ownership. I'd waited for repayment that never materialized. Now I was done waiting. The confirmation email pinged. "Account frozen, pending closure." Unless she paid up. I exhaled, a weight lifting, but the victory felt hollow with Lauren's theft and that brunch still stinging. They weren't just ungrateful. They were predators, and I'd been their prey for too long. I rummaged through my purse, found the credit card, and called to report it stolen. The representative asked for details. I gave them, my voice flat, filing a fraud claim against my own sister. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about establishing a boundary they never respected. That night, my phone buzzed with a photo from Lauren. My credit card snapped before she'd used it, captioned, "Thanks for the spa day, sis." She'd sent it to the family chat, a taunt, proof she didn't care. I saved the screenshot, evidence for the bank, maybe the police if it came to that. My hands shook, not from fear, but from an unidentifiable rage. They'd humiliated me at Christmas, mocked me online, stolen from me, and now paraded it like a prize. I thought of the blacklist, rules. No sulking. No victimhood. And laughed, a dark, jagged sound. They didn't desire harmony. They desired control, and I'd surrendered it for years, check by check, favor by favor. But not anymore. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The brunch had been a stage, the theft a power play, both designed to break me. Instead, they'd forged something stronger. I'd spent $100,000 on them over the years. Car loans, bills, holidays, money I'd never recover. But that savings account, that was mine, and closing it was just the beginning. They'd underestimated me, thought I'd yield as always. I opened the notice confirmation, forwarded it to my email, and started a new document, every expense, every slight, every time I'd agreed when I should have refused. They'd soon realize, Sarah wasn't their ATM anymore, she was their reckoning. New Year's Eve arrived, and I wasn't formally invited, but Mom's text came anyway. "Family party at our place, 7 p.m. hope you'll join." No apology, just that artificial warmth I'd grown to despise. I went, not for reconciliation, but to end this. I'd spent the week after the brunch gathering ammunition, bank statements, the fraud claim against Lauren, that incriminating spa photo. The savings account was already locked. Mom's panicked voicemails confirmed she'd seen the notice. I walked into their house, the air thick with pine and tension, an envelope in my coat pocket. Lauren greeted me at the door, smirking. "Look who's back for more." I brushed past her. Mom called from the kitchen. "Sarah, grab a plate." I didn't. Instead, I dropped the envelope on the dining table, the thud cutting through their chatter. "What's this?" Dad asked, frowning. "Open it," I said, arms crossed. Mom emerged, wiping her hands, and slit the envelope. Her face paled as she read. "Final notice of account closure. $10,000 in unrepaid withdrawals listed. Yours and Lauren's. You're $10,000 in the red," I said, my voice cold. "That's mine, not yours." Lauren lunged across the table. You're a monster! After everything we've done! I laughed, dry and sharp. Like stealing my credit card? $800, Lauren? Ring a bell? I tossed the printed statement onto the table, charges circled in red. Dad muttered, ungrateful. But his eyes flicked to the paper. Mom clutched the notice. We're family, Sarah. You don't do this. I stepped closer. Family doesn't steal, blacklist me, then beg for more. I'm done. The room fell silent, their guests, cousins, neighbors shifting uncomfortably. Then Lauren smirked. You're just upset we called you out. That's when I dropped the second bombshell. Speaking of calling out, I said, pulling another sheet from my pocket. You sold my laptop, didn't you? Her smirk faltered. I'd lent it to her last year when hers crashed. A cousin had tipped me off. She'd pawned it for $300, boasting about the easy money. I'd confirmed it with the shop's receipt, dated a month ago. That's theft number 2, I said, sliding the receipt next to the credit card statement. Mom gasped. Lauren, is that true? Lauren stammered. It was old anyway. I shook my head. It was mine. Like the money you've both been draining from me. Dad stood. This is absurd. You're exaggerating. I met his gaze. $10,000 over 5 years. Paid car loans, bills, holidays. I have the records. You signed the account over. It's mine to reclaim. Mom sobbed. We raised you. I interrupted her. And I paid you for it, literally. The air crackled. Lauren shouted. You're ruining everything! And swiped the papers off the table, tearing the notice in half. I didn't flinch. That's a copy, I said. The bank has the original. Dad pointed at the door. Get out! I nodded willingly. But before I left, I turned to Mom. You have 30 days to pay up or it's gone. Account, support, all of it. She wailed. You're heartless. I looked at Lauren, then her. You wrote the rules. I'm just following them. No more guilt trips. I walked out, their shouts fading behind me. The cold bit my face, but I felt lighter than I had in years. 2 days later, a lawyer's letter arrived, Mom's desperate countermove. They asserted I'd coerced the account transfer, demanded I reverse it, and resume financial assistance. I contacted my own lawyer, sent the records, text statements, that laptop receipt. They've got nothing, she said. It's yours. I hung up, staring at the ceiling. Lauren Steph's, Mom's laminated humiliation, they'd pushed too far, and I'd pushed back harder. Then my phone buzzed, a text from my nephew Jake, Lauren's child. Aunt Sarah, I'm sorry. Mom's a mess, but you didn't deserve this. I typed back. Thanks, kid. You're okay? His reply, a thumbs-up emoji, was a small glimmer of light in the wreckage. I sat there, the house silent, and realized it was over. They'd lost their leverage, and I'd discovered mine. The aftermath wasn't pleasant, but it was mine to shape now. 3 months have passed since I exited Mom's New Year's party, the torn notice scattered on her floor. I'm in a new apartment now, small, clean, my own. No buzzing group chats, no late-night pleas for cash. Mom and Lauren moved in with Aunt Jen last week. The savings account is closed. My lawyer dismissed their flimsy claim. I didn't watch them leave. I just received an email from the bank. Funds unsecured. I hosted my own Christmas in March, a do-over. 1 plate, a store-bought pie I burned anyway, and laughter that echoed off bare walls. No rules, no blacklist. Then a card slipped through my mail slot, no return address. Inside, a photo, me at 10, grinning in a Santa hat, the family blurred around me. On the back, Jake had scribbled, "You were enough, Aunt Sarah." I sat on the couch, tears falling, not for them, but for the girl I'd been, finally liberated. I don't regret it. I'd spent decades trying to prove my